Hello there. I am David A. Specht, the original old dog. If there is anything I have learned in my 30 plus years of life and leadership, I have learned that mindset is everything. Join me and my guests as we explore the positives and negatives of that thing between our ears. This is Keep This in Mind. Hello and welcome to Keep This in Mind, brought to you by SpechtHealth.com. I am David A. Specht, and today is a very special show. I know, I sound like Ed Milet. Every show is a special show. But it really is, because if you followed me for any length of time, you know that my heart is for people that are in the boat that I'm in, meaning they're in their 40s to 60. Their life may be changing, whether they want it to or not. And today I want to talk to a good friend of mine, Bruce Weinstein, who is in the planning business. Now you're like, what is the planning business? Well, it really boils down to, what do you want your future to look like? What do you want your legacy to be? How do you want to take care of you and others as you keep moving down this journey we call life? And Bruce is really a great guy that I just happened to meet through some mutual relationships, mutual rooms. And all of a sudden we just kind of connected on a level, because on his side, he is contending for his health and future. And on my side, I'm contending for my health and my future. And it just really kind of came together. Bruce, I want to welcome you to the show. And I know Weinstein Wealth is like the corporate name, but you're known as the Plan Man. Kind of take us through the journey to becoming the Plan Man.
Sure. Well, the show I have is called Ask the Plan Man, and that's evolved over years and years. I started out as a financial advisor in 1986. We were just called account executives back then. And what I was doing in the early days, and we were just talking offline about the cold calling and finding and generating leads. So we literally cold called out of a phone book. And there was an audience available at certain times of the day, and you had to adapt to who was answering on the phone. You had to make your own assumptions. And so for me, I wasn't about, even to this day, I'm never about selling something. I'm about solving a problem. And so I was doing consultative sales in the 1980s when those terms didn't exist. I didn't know what it was called, but I had my spiel, and my spiel was basically to uncover and find out what's going on with the person on the other end of the phone. So even though the brokerage firm wanted me to sell the product of the day, well, I didn't know if the woman answering the phone, if the man answering the phone, maybe they needed a tax-free income. Maybe they needed to plan for college. And so I was an early adapter in the world of planning, and eventually studied for my certification to become a financial planner, certified financial planner in 2011. And so I've been doing the planning. In essence, it's the horse before the cart. And so for me, the tale behind it is, I've always used the analogies that investing in planning is like you going to the doctor. Excuse me. If you tell the doctor something's bothering you, the doctor's going to ask you a series of questions. By process of elimination, they're going to start to narrow down where they think the problem lies. And eventually they're going to give you a prescription or a suggestion and maybe a medication. So how would you feel going to a doctor who didn't ask you any of this and said, just take this pill? Well, if you take that to the financial services end, when they're selling you what they want to sell you, aren't they just giving you a pill? Whether it's an Apple stock or a tax-free bond or a mutual fund, if they didn't ask you any of those questions, your goals, your objectives, your risk tolerance, your timelines, isn't it a level of malpractice? And so I always wanted to begin with the end in mind. What are you trying to accomplish? Mm-hmm. And then by addressing those, coming up with a plan, we can then mitigate risk. We can put the right type of investment portfolio together, insurance, investments, and otherwise. And so the plan became this organism that people could then focus on, work on. And it's, as anything in the computer world is, it's obsolete the second it becomes built and designed and implemented, but that's where the modification comes in over time. So does that Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, and we'll just pick on me for a minute because I'm easy to pick on. The idea of needing a financial plan really didn't arise until, when you're in your 20s and your 30s, you're like, man, I can earn whatever I need. I can always work. I can always do. I had a company that would take care of, maybe an IRA here or there. Maybe somebody listening has a 401k. But at some point I realized that wasn't enough, that wasn't going to serve me long term. And as you end up watching the market, as you end up watching, what's going on in the world, I would say that there's a great deal of uncertainty as far as people feeling confident in their financial future. What would you say to somebody like me who is now, like, I'm not going to say I'm in the sunset of my career, obviously, but at the same time, I know I don't have another 40 years ahead of me of work either. So what would you say to somebody in that 40 to 60 age range that may think that they were taken care of by their current employer, or maybe they're self-employed and they just really never thought about it? They were just out grinding and earning money. What would you say to that individual to kind of get them thinking about developing a plan?
Well, let me even go back earlier for a second and then come back to this, because you and I both fell probably into the trap that a lot of the younger people, our kids, are misguided by, and that's the lack of education on the compounding of money. And that when you say, oh, I maybe didn't have a plan in my 20s or 30s, but think about if you could sit down with your 18-year-old self, your 25-year-old self, your 35-year-old self, and you said, look, if you just put $200 away at an average rate of return, look how much you would have when you're 40. Look how much you would have when you're 50. Now you fast forward that to the 40 and 50-year-old who didn't do that, and all those years are now missing in the savings and the compounding. So I do this exercise where I call it the camel humps, is the frequency of how often money doubles. And the problem that the 40, 50, and 60-year-old faces is we can't make up for time. Time is the biggest ally when it comes to the compounding of money. So you may know, if your listener may know about the rule of 72, which is just a mathematical ability to calculate how frequently something's going to double. So as an example, you take 72, if you made 8% on your money's going to double every 9 years. Simple math. Divide 8 into 72, the answer is 9. That means every 9 years your money's going to double. Well, what if you made 12%? Well, now your money doubles every 6 years. What if you made 3%? What if you sat in cash and only bought CDs and barely made 3%? Well, now your money's doubling every 24 years. So now when you start to draw the timelines of people's life expectancies, and you take an 18-year-old, a 25-year-old, a 30-year-old, and you give them those extra years of these camel humps, that $2,000 they did when they were 18 in a Roth IRA, all of a sudden has doubled, tripled, quadrupled. The camel humps just keep doubling. 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 8, 16, 32, 64, 128. That $2,000 you and I can't turn into $128,000 that quickly anymore. Doesn't matter what the rate of return is, you don't have the time. So the lesson back, you were saying, to the audience, the 40 to the 60-year-old, is you haven't done it. Now you're chasing to get a larger volume. It's going to require you to put larger sums of money away and potentially take higher levels of risk to make the higher returns associated with that, because you're playing catch up. Whereas if you had done it at 20, a 6% rate of return gets you to here. Now you need a 25% rate of return to play catch up. Well, the likelihood of doing that with success long term, and again, I'm just kind of making those numbers up,
right,
is you just don't have the ability to go make that kind of significant, consistent return. You might got lucky. Everybody gets lucky once in a while. You get involved in a good opportunity at the ground floor. I mean, imagine if you owned Apple 40 years ago, how much that would be worth today, right? That's probably well better than a standardized return of 10 or 12%.
Absolutely. So as we're looking at it, I think that in this area, a lot of us are faced with monumental change, meaning the way we've always done business is changed. And and COVID was an accelerator. That's what I call it. I call it an accelerator. We were headed to some of these changes, but COVID accelerated. Telemedicine, Zoom meetings instead of in person, flex time. All of these things were accelerated during COVID, but also the opportunities changed during COVID. And so what would you say to somebody who's like facing a brand new world out there and they're kind of scared of it? It's they don't know what to invest in, or is real estate the way to go? Well, I see these kids making $100,000 a month on TikTok or whatever. There's all this noise out there with regard to finances. What do you say to somebody who's like, because here's the thing, when you don't understand something, you're frozen. You rarely take action. So what would you say to somebody who's just like completely in a frozen mindset as a result of all the change going on?
Well, I think if you break down a little bit of what you just said, is there's the earning capacity and then there's what to do with it. So the TikToker and the influencer that's suddenly making $100,000 a month, creating that business, the question then is, how long is that going to last? Right? That could be a very big unknown. It could end as fast, everybody has 15 minutes of fame. It could end as fast as it is, or it endures long enough that it could be a long-term business model for them. So that's the business, what we might call the human capital, is your ability to go earn the income, go earn the money. The second piece to your question, to me, was what do I do with it once I have it? And so the frozenness isn't, well, I'm going to keep TikToking or run my health and coaching business or write a third book. That's all going to be revenue generating. Then what do you do with that revenue and where do you put it? And so again, people like me exist to help you play the what if and what's it about scenarios. And there's a couple of things I've said over the years, and you kind of tie back. If you won the lottery, and obviously a significant amount of lottery, not $2, which is what my usual winnings is, like somebody won $14 billion, but I got $4. If you won the lottery, what would you do differently? And my counterpoint to that is each and every one of us already has their lottery ticket. You just don't know the turn-in date, because the financial plan is going to tell you when you could turn in your lottery ticket based upon the goals and objectives that you've set. Okay. So now rewind to this where you say, well, what do I do with that money? Well, you can get free planning software. Anybody can crunch numbers. What an advisor does is take, in my case, my 36 years of experience and the hundreds, if not thousands of clients I've counseled, is I put color to the analytics. Because it's not just a matter of, well, if you save $2,000 a month for the next 10 years, you'll have X. To your point is, well, what am I putting my $2,000 in? Do I understand what it's doing? Is it the right thing? Am I sleeping well at night? Am I too aggressive? What if it blows up? What's the risk of it blowing up? Right? Same with real estate. Whatever your investment is, Bitcoins, the flavor of the choice really comes down to you. Do you understand where your money's going? I cannot tell you the mistakes people have made over the years of buying mutual funds based upon reading a performance report and the number, because it was the shiny object, it just made 82% last year. I better put my money in there. Well, it's a massive mistake most times out of not. And then the question I always ask is, David, what do they do with your money to make that 82%? I don't know. Well, but you should know. You need to know what the mutual funds are investing in. There's different asset classes. I've got a podcast on asset allocation where we talk about the differences in the categories. And look, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of Bitcoin and the crypto world. Maybe I'm more old school. But if it has its place for you as a risk taker, so be it. But to what extent of your portfolio should be exposed? That's risk assessment. How much money in gold? How much money in cash? How much money in blue chip stocks? How much money in technology stocks, pharmaceutical stocks? So to your questions before is that's color to the analytics. So whether it's me or any other financial advisor, you want to push back to them and make sure you're getting this colorization to understanding what's going into your financial game plan, which then also ties into the insurances and the risks. And, we do a very fundamental breakdown of SWOT: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. That's what any business plan does. If you're the CEO of XYZ company, your company's doing SWOT assessments all the time. You and your business should do a SWOT assessment, right? Of where is my business going? Where are the weaknesses? Where are the threats? Where are my opportunities? Oh, by the way, these are my strengths. That TikTok influencer's got a SWOT and strengths. She's making $100,000 a month. What are her opportunities? What are her threats? Right? What are her weaknesses? So that theorem can be applied in every walk of life. Our weight loss program. What's my biggest threat? Oh, it's the bag of potato chips. It's the pint of ice cream, right? What are my opportunities? Well, I could stop buying them, right? Stop shopping for them and don't keep them in the house, right? So is that kind of giving you, I don't know if you have a further thought or question. Is that making sense?
Yeah. And I want to say too, I think people see financial planning as very complex, and so they need the help of a financial advisor. Not every financial advisor, walks into the door like you said. They're not asking the questions; they're sharing the product. But financial security is much more than just where do I put the money that I have, right? It's protecting what I've got from how should I say it? Things that they couldn't avoid, they didn't know that was coming, the unknown in the future, and I think that's one of the things that you have talked about a lot that you bring to the table is that it's not just, what I invest in, but it's how I protect through insurance, or it's how I save through, health plan that's not only affordable, but that doesn't leave me with a huge, deductible to pay or whatever at the, for the unknown. So, go ahead.
The problem is there's a lot of people that hold themselves out as financial planners. I couldn't tell you statistically how many financial advisors are out there, but a financial advisor doesn't necessarily mean they're a financial planner. They might be a portfolio manager. They might be a stockbroker. They might be good at managing money, but they don't necessarily understand or can convey to the inertia it requires the breakdown of planning and cover all the different topics. The Certified Financial Planning exam covers 82 subtopics of planning and investment and interest items, 82 different subcategories, whether that's auto insurance, homeowners insurance, inflation, taxes. There's so many different points of it. So can you speak to, with clarity and understanding, to your end user, the client, and uncovering all these areas of vulnerabilities? Now, a lot of times it's check. You're great. But you know what? This is a weakness. This is a weakness. This is a weakness. This is a threat. Okay. What was one of your biggest threats if you rewind to your health weight loss journey? Your biggest threat was weighing 120 pounds more to your health, to your longevity. So it didn't matter how much money you were saving if you keeled over from a heart attack because you were 300 and X amount of pounds, right? So isn't that a threat to your existence, right? It became a threat to your ability to get life insurance or the price you paid for your life insurance, right? So again, it's not just a matter of what's on my balance sheet, but there's other components that go into this. And so for me, it's just a matter of, again, I use the term putting color behind it. I'm a storyteller. So you listen to more and more of my stuff and interact with me in the seminars I've done and the workshops. It's about stories that people can correlate and understanding, like I did with the lottery ticket, right? Everybody at some point in their lives plays bingo, the lottery, the casino, whatever, like a game of chance, right? So the investment world and the planning isn't supposed to be a correlation of risk reward to a sum zero game. Like, you're not in it to lose it. You want consistency and stabilization of performance. Well, how do I get that? What do I do? What happens when the markets go down? Because guess what? They will go down. Just look at the history of how many years the markets go up, how many years the markets go down, how many times in just in my business career and lifetime, the markets have gone through corrections. If you're not properly educating the client and giving them the expectations of, look, for every 4 years of good, you might have 1 or 2 years of bad, and we're looking for the average of, and then you take that over the 40 years, you could expect to have 5 or 6 events like this. But by educating them of what to do, the proper positioning of their portfolio, the asset allocation designing, the rebalancing, it creates opportunities when those crises occur, right? The old Chinese, proverb, crisis and opportunity are the same word in Chinese. So how you handle that, how here's a big word for me, is set clients' expectations. Well, when the bad times occur, and trust me, they will, over and over, they will. All things end badly, otherwise they wouldn't end, right? So problem is you're not expecting it. There's nothing on your calendar. Like, we had this appointment set to do our recording. We put that on the calendar and said, we're going to record on this day. Well, there's nothing on my calendar, your calendar, or John Q. Public's calendar that says this is the day the market's going to crash. Be prepared. It's going to come out of nowhere. Okay, whether it's an invasion in the Ukraine or go back to, I know you're a veteran of the Gulf War. When the Gulf Wars happened, the markets didn't like that. The markets behaved poorly and pulled back in a corrective mode. So is that time to sell or is it time to buy? Well, realistically, look where we are now. It was time to buy. It wasn't the time to sell. So planning, proactivity, understanding, setting expectations, massaging that with clients, really just building for them their castle and the moat best you can. And then using, obviously, the insurance world is for the other pieces that go into that: health, life, disability, long-term care as they get older. So again, they just complement each other.
Well, I love how you said, you build the moat the best you can, and there are going to be corrections, but it's not on the calendar. I want to talk to a minute about unexpected change. And what I mean by that is, and sometimes we create the unexpected change, and sometimes it happens to us. As I read the news, try not to read the news too terribly much, otherwise I'll be depressed. But, major companies have had major layoffs, Google, Amazon. There's a lot of relocation. Again, I hate to bang the COVID drum, but COVID really did change a lot of people. And, what do you say to that person that thought it was going to be this way, meaning I was going to have a job until I was 65 and now I've been laid off, or I thought I was going to be in this area and now I'm not, or I thought this was going to take care of me and now it's not. And I'm starting over in a lot of ways. I have some ability, maybe I sold my home and I have, some equity that, as I relocate. But what would you say if your life radically changed, your job, your location, whatever, radically changed today? What would be like 3 to 5 things that you should really look at before you get too deep into the next step?
Oof. Well, I'll reference back to your book about Stop, Think, and Challenge. I'm not sure if I said it the right way, but, stop, drop, and roll, right? We talked about this when you were on our show. Is first and foremost, you need to assess where you are, right? How bad is the damage, right? And so I need to know what my current position is and status is. And then, again, this is why the planning is a constant state of adjustment. I tell clients you want to review your insurances every year. When you have health insurance, you re-enroll every year. Why? Plans change, your needs change. Why does Medicare have an open enrollment? Why does health insurance have an open enrollment? It's a time to go back in and reassess what's changed and should I do something different for the next 12 months. So nothing's a permanent decision. So your plan is not a permanent, When you made your plan at 40, you don't just ignore it till you're 50, 60, and 70. You're paying attention. So if you have a good advisor, you should be reviewing every year or so. And especially, which is what you just hit, is when a life event occurs. So you could be status quo working at your job for the next 15 years and not need a lot of massaging. But now you had a life event. You just lost your job, or you got divorced, or you got married, or you had a baby, or somebody died, God forbid. Okay. So all of these life changes come about to review and reassess. So I'm not sure if I could fairly answer your question to its due, but I'm hoping I'm understanding the gist of it. Is somebody's had this major upheaval, and so it's a matter of catching your breath, understanding what's transpired. And look, I got to tell you, in my 36 years, what's happened here is not new. The corporate world has gone through its numerous cycles of layoffs and expansions. That's what economies do. So this round of layoffs is no different than what happened when the market crashed in 87 and the dot-com in 2000. And, so again, history repeats itself. The problem is, there's an old joke. What's the difference between a recession and a depression? A recession is your neighbor lost their job. A depression is you lost your job. It's an old joke. Okay. So it's fine when it's everybody else, and it's bad when it's you. Right. Mm-hmm. And so the challenge is to, I guess, a good segment of your listener is age in the corporate world starts to work against you. There's a lot of times, many, many, many times that I care to even think about, that I've had clients of mine in their mid to later 50s making a good living, trying to get to the home stretch of retirement, and all of a sudden they're given the pink slip. Why? They're making too much money. They got old man syndrome, meaning that 55-year-old, male or female, can be replaced by two 27-year-olds or a 32-year-old at half the pay. And so we start to get priced out of that job. We start to become antiquated by the corporate views. Hey, David's expendable, his $250,000 income. We can hire 4 people now for that role. 4 is better than 1, at least from their vantage point, right? So I don't necessarily have the specific answer to the question from a 10,000-foot view, except to say you need to assess, and then what you do. You've made yourself self-employed. I'm self-employed, and that's the problem when somebody has a job and works for somebody else. They don't have that control. So maybe building a second level of income stream as a fallback, having control, eventually building it up into your own. I mean, the world's not meant to have everybody be entrepreneurs. There's workers and there's risk takers and entrepreneurs out there. So, you have to kind of know your plight in the world and your position. And some people need to just pull up their pants and just make a big leap of faith to, I got to start working for myself. Yeah. When the markets the housing market in 07, 08, I know professionals that I interact with in my trusted advisor world that B2B CFO and chief outsiders and these were people that got displaced in the world of CFOs, chief financial officers. They usually at the top of the food chain, they're C-suite type employees, okay, C-level, right? Chief executive officer, chief operating officer, chief financial officer. So these big companies started to go through layoffs. Well, CFOs were losing their job and they're highly priced and the jobs weren't there to fill, right? There was constriction, there was mergers, there was acquisitions, there were, how many brokerage firms and banks merged and collapsed during that window and half the jobs got eliminated. Right. So chief outsiders is for chief marketing officers. same thing. Jobs disappeared. Corporations disappeared. And so what grew of that entrepreneurial spirit is they became their own little microcosm of an organization. I don't want to call it a franchise. I don't know enough about it. But now there's a network of B2B, business to business CFOs. My friend Terry's in one. He has his specialty and he works on a fractional share basis. You could bring them in. And then he has his counterparts around the country that might have a different forte. Again, try not to get in the weeds here. I apologize. But the point is that from crisis becomes opportunity again. So that person who's been upheavaled, look, everything was in person. So Zoom and team meetings and all this technology that you and I are on evolved, and those companies exploded in growth. You were an early investor in Zoom. You weren't making very much money till COVID hit, and then all of a sudden you made 50 times your money pretty much, in a matter of weeks, right? So they expanded. They were hiring more people. They had to meet the demand that was out there. So there's always an opportunity. As used to say, there's my dad used to say this years ago, when it comes to investing, there's always another trolley coming by. Okay. There's always another bus. There's always another train. There's always another opportunity. And so where the smart people are is they're always looking into the future of where's this next opportunity going to be. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it might have been Bitcoin, and it went from pennies to $60,000. Is it going to continue? Did it pull back? Is it dead? Where is it? I don't know. Only time will tell. So you have to assess where you are, where you're still trying to get. Sometimes you got to take your lumps. It could be painful, right? The lifestyle that you built is suddenly turned upside down. Unfortunately, we experience that in our lives. And so you've got to make decisions. Do you want to come out on the other side better, or are you going to collapse to it and give in and just allow the circumstances to overwhelm you and fail? And so that's your human spirit.
Right. I would, so I love the picture that you painted. I don't love the picture in and of itself.
Sure.
But at the same time, I think it kind of circles us right back to where we started, and that is having a trusted planner involved in your life. Because one of the things, like when I moved from Louisiana to Tennessee, I didn't get rid of my Louisiana company. Okay, I still own, manage, etc. But what didn't transfer, I can get paid, I can get a salary, but some of my benefits couldn't cross state lines. And I found myself scrambling to take care of me and my wife from a health insurance standpoint, which was it just blew me away, because then all of a sudden I dove into some deep waters that I didn't even know I was going to be swimming in, much less diving in.
Right.
And, and I know that's one of the services that's part of what you do. But at the same time, had I had a planner in my life the entire time, I would say that we would have done that SWOT analysis prior to my move and saying, okay, David, when you cross that state line, here's something you're going to have to look at.
That's right.
And so kind of talk about, the world gets smaller, but it's still fragmented. There's states, there's cities, there's different. It's different for you where you are than where I am, as far as, some of the responsibilities, some of the costs involved. So let's kind of bring it back home about, why would I need a trusted financial advisor and planner in my life?
Well, I as you were kind of going through this a little bit about crossing the state line, what pictured in my head is the person holding your hand when you cross the street, the crossing guards when we were kids, right? Why were they there? What was their intent or purpose? They put up the sign, they walked out in the middle of the road, and they let you cross the street safely. Okay. And so again, not every advisor is adapted. I run a group for many, many years. It's a trusted advisor group. So I don't profess to know everything. I'm dangerous in a lot of areas, and I'm an expert in several as well. But if I don't know the answer, I know people that do. And so I've positioned myself to be valuable to you as a client to help you one-stop shopping. And so, maybe 5 or 10 years ago, we weren't doing health insurance. As your trusted advisor, your financial advisor, your financial planner, I said, you know what, David, you're going to be dealing with some stuff here. Let's bring in X expert to help you understand what this move out of market's going to create so that maybe you don't make that move, right? But at least to me, people ask me questions all the time. I know that they tend to be somewhat rhetorical or specific. And my standard answer is, it depends. Because there's nothing concrete. Again, it's a matter of, well, I have questions to understand what you're asking of me beyond its superficial question. Because you haven't thought about things. I'm the guy who slings mud on the wall to see what sticks and challenge the status quo in the thought process. Because 9 out of 10 times you're going to go, hey, I didn't think of that. Well, that's the point. Now, some of it may not correlate, but if one nugget out of there became I hadn't thought of that and I need to look at it from a different angle, well, then I did my job, right? I made you think it through. So I'm all about information, knowledge, proactivity, and getting into the weeds with some of the questions to truly understand the problem. And again, not everybody counsels that way. Not everybody has, so there's 1 lane of traffic roads and there's 4 lane highway roads, right? So some people operate on 4 lanes and some are just, rural, 1 each way. So you have to understand and ask the advisors that are in your contact book where their limitations might lie, if they even know. And could you handle this? Could you handle this? But that's a matter of the consumer being astute enough to ask. You've heard the lines, I don't know what I don't know, so how am I supposed to ask for it?
Right.
Well, that's my role. I'm going to say, you know what, David, you should have asked me this. You should have asked me about that. And again, I'm not trying to poke you in the eyes, but I basically say, look, I say it more tactfully. Have you thought about the ramifications of this? If X, can you accept the outcome of Y? Right? If you don't like where Y is taking you, well, we need to adjust, which is what the planning does. The planning, everybody out there can correlate to Google Maps, Apple Maps, Waze, Garmin's, right? They're destination devices. You got to plug in, you want to get to Nashville by 2 p.m., and you're plugging in what you think to be a reasonable amount of lead time, and all of a sudden you put it into Waze, and it tells you there's an accident, and it's a 45-minute delay, and you're not going to get there in time. Well, now what are you going to do? But now you have information. I have to reroute. I have to leave earlier. I need to call that appointment and let them know I'm running late. But the proactivity created outcomes for you to decide upon, right? Mm-hmm. Or just flat out, I'm not going. I'm going to stay home. So the planning is, again, that proactivity in correlation to where are you trying to go? Can I get there when I want to get there? What's in my way? And again, I'm thinking of some of the roads in the Nashville area, like Route 40, I think is one of them, right? So, if 40 is under construction, there's an accident, 4 lanes are down to 1, and it's a 3-hour wait, I'm probably not going to make that appointment, am I? I'm stuck. And so back to my whole life just got disrupted. I lost my job, my industry. I don't know what to do. I can't get a job. Well, isn't that the same roadblock that you just experienced on your ways? Like, yeah, well, now you're kind of stuck. So what do I do? Do I reroute? Do I go home? How do I regroup? What do I do with what I have to survive? Right? I might have to make decisions. Well, again, depending on what you're dealing with, we're working with a client now that they're dealing with some challenges on. It's a good thing, but it's a mixed blessing. Their daughter just got into NYU, New York University. Okay, $87,000 a year times 4. That's $350,000. Okay, now they put away within a reasonable amount of savings into a college savings plan, but they in no way ever thought they'd need $350,000. They have about enough money to cover the first year. Okay. It's a blessing, and yet it's now a problem, is it not? Like, what are we going to do? Because how do you tell your kid, I only have enough for 1 year of school, you can't go? Or we got to figure out ways to get at the money. So again, information, knowledge, they reached out to us. Hey, this is what we're dealing with. We're looking for some ideas. What do you think? We talked about student loans. As smart of a student she was, the Ivy League type schools don't give scholarships. So she wasn't getting a nickel of aid. It was go borrow. Okay, well, what are their options to borrowing? And we kind of went through the rates and so again, just to fast forward the story, ultimately it was kind of like, look, a student loan is going to cost you this amount of interest, let's call it 9, and it's not tax deductible. So again, I'm giving them information, right? Because they're thinking, we're just going to go take student loans like everybody else. I said, well, wait, tell me about your home. Because as COVID has done, pockets of the country have seen escalating home value prices. True?
Right.
Nashville for one, South Florida where I am for one, and they're in New Jersey. So as people left New York, New Jersey prices took off as well. People wanted to go into the suburbs. So their home had some additional value added. Now here's the dilemma, right? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, strengths. Strength, they had capital in their home. Strength, they had a low mortgage rate. Threat, I got to refinance. Opportunity, I've got capital to take out. But it's going to require them to refinance a low interest rate from, let's say, 3 to 6. So you might say, well, I don't want to give up my 3% loan on my mortgage, right? I wouldn't. Nobody would. Right. Now you got to go refinance it to get the capital they want out. There's $300,000 of money in the house. In order to get it, they got to refinance, which means the original mortgage has to get redone, put in a new mortgage, and the rates just doubled. So again, your listener, what are you thinking? Like, well, God, I don't want to do that. Okay, but what's the alternative? The alternative is you don't touch the equity money in the house. You go borrow $300,000 at 9%. That's not tax deductible. Right. But guess what the 6% is? It's tax deductible. That's a double in the cost of borrowing the money. And so, again, I had to frame it for them to think about it and be able to make some decisions. But what was it? It was evaluating the playing field and understanding their options.
Yes.
They had a notion of one, I'm just going to go take a student loan. Okay. What's the SWOT on a student loan, right? Weakness, threat, not tax deductible, higher interest rate. What about your home? Oh, opportunity, right? So, again, that's where we're going now. And I don't do that stuff. We put them in touch with somebody that does mortgage refinancing, and they're going to put them in a position to get that money out and then be able to pay for school accordingly with that capital. Okay. Now, again, none of that correlates to business for Bruce as a planner, but look at the value that we're bringing to people and the knowledge that we're bringing to people. That could be certainly a good podcast episode, right, for Ask the Plan Man. But it's just people understanding things. Now, again, this is a 20-year relationship we have with them as friends. So, we're going to help them. And guess what? That information is going to serve them. And then who knows how referable we become from that. And that's all we're looking for, is just how do we help people understand and take out the confusion and the lack of understanding and put people in a position to make the best decisions for themselves.
I think that perfectly sums up why they call you the plan man, because what you just illustrated really does help somebody in need to assess and make a great decision. And isn't that what a plan is assessing and making the right decision, or at least making the best decision you can with the information you have? So, Bruce, what if people want to get in touch with you? What are some of the ways that these listeners, these viewers can follow you and really dive into what you have to offer?
Well, first and foremost, they can check out our YouTube channel, Ask the Plan Man. It's planman.tv. It'll take you right to our YouTube. And then we have it on Apple, Spotify, and all the audio channels as well. So just look up Ask the Plan Man. We got websites. We've got, what else do we got? 844 Plan Man phone number, Bruce at asktheplanman.com. So pretty much anything in the social media world, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, trying to get my TikTok going, but yeah, and anything. Here, there's a quick one. If people are watching the show, I have a digital business card. You could text the word Plan Man, all one word. Autocorrect will separate it, and the number is 321-421-5213, and that'll deliver to your phone our digital business card, and then you could schedule a call, send us a text, email, whatever. Just save it to your contacts. But planman.tv, come follow our episodes. David's on the show actually this week, depending on when David's releasing this episode. But April 10th of 2023, David's on my show, Ask the Plan Man, and we had a great conversation. So but thank you, David.
Thank you, Bruce, for being on the show. It has been an amazing episode. Again, it's a subject matter that we all need to dive into. And as I always say, and even more so today, applied knowledge is power. That is going to do it for this episode of Keep This in Mind. For more, visit davidaspecht.com. Like, follow, and subscribe. Thank you for listening, and remember, applied knowledge is power. God bless.